there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be inking over some stenciling and paste and things. So I'm starting off here with some of the Crafters Workshop Light and Fluffy paste. There are so many pastes out there on the market and many of them are very similar. Sometimes called modeling paste or texture paste or stenciling pastes. Any of those things are all very similar. And I'm going to spread some through with a little palette knife onto this brick stencil. This stencil is from My Favorite Things. I have no idea if this is still current or not because I went through a little pile of stuff I've had for like a couple of years and finally took it all out of its packaging and put it in front of me so that I will use it or hand it on to somebody else who will use it. So I'm using this brick stencil. I've got a nice even layer, not too thick because I don't want to wait for it to dry forever. But here it's all nice and dry, and this is of course just white on white, and I did do this on some Tim Holtz watercolor paper. Now here I have, this is actually a Tim Holtz stencil. I think it's called Poinsettia or something like that. It's obviously a Christmas stencil, however I don't want to use it for Christmas, but I want to use it all year round rather than only one little time of the year. So by the time I'm done with this, to me this doesn't look like it was a Christmas stencil used. And also I'm going to block out all of the little dots and holly and things like that, so that will help out and it will just look like a gorgeous flower. Thank you Jocelyn for sending this one down from the North Island to me, and I'm going to get plenty of use out of this one, as you can see. I'm bringing in some inks. On the left is Guppy and Sike, and then on the right is Rosy Cheeks and Triple Berry. These are from Simon Hurley's ink range, and basically there's just a yellow and an orange and then kind of a pink and a purple, and I'm going to layer up these flowers. Now I have some little finger daubers here, and I am putting down the Sike first, which is kind of it's like a yellowy green color, but I'm using it as kind of a yellow color. Turn the stencil around, and I'm actually not going to wipe off the stencil in between, but I'm just going to find a nice little place where I can kind of double up the leaves and you'll still be able to see some of the yellow behind it, and then I will use the orange. So here I get this kind of nice dimensional flower over top of the stencil paste. Now this stencils beautifully, but it gives it that gorgeous texture in the background. So I'm able to kind of put my ink down really nicely, there's no trouble there. And for this one I am going to be adding the light pink behind it, then I will shift the stencil around again and then add the kind of slightly more purpley colour over top, and you can see some of the pink from out behind, and then the purple is going to be at the front. But you could do it either way around. You could add 3 layers, you could have all different colours to this. To me, as I said, this no longer looks like a Christmas stencil, and so that's really important that we find another way to kind of use our stencils that are Christmas orientated, but we can use them all year round. So I am going to spread a few of these little flowers out and about and around. Now I am going to add other things on top of this, of course, and you could definitely kind of do far more colours of these, but I'm just going to stick with these 2 different little coloured flowers here. One question that seems to be coming up lots recently is why, if I know I'm going to cut down my panel, do I not cut it down to begin with? Now there's a couple of things here. One, if I'm creating a pattern or something, I like to wait until after I've done it so that I can pick out the best parts and the bits that I like the best and leave those in and kind of trim off other bits. Or if I make a mistake or there's something like that I don't like, I will definitely take the opportunity to cut off that. Or if I want those nice beautiful kind of inked edges, you get a different look if you kind of cut it early or cut it later on. So a few different reasons why I choose to kind of cut it after I've decorated the front panel. Now I have a couple of different colours here. One is Hickory Smoke and one is Weathered Wood. Now these are both Distress Oxide inks, and I have been leaning a lot recently towards the Weathered Wood colour, which is kind of like, it's a grey blue, but it's a very soft grey blue kind of colour, and it's a little bit warmer than the Hickory Smoke colour. I use these colours often in my card making, I must admit. I really love adding them onto the background, and it's kind of almost a little bit of a nice neutral color. Now here I just want to pick up a little bit of detail with these bricks. So because I chose watercolor paper, this means that I can kind of put down color and then it will be absolutely fine. I'm using a water brush to pop it down, and if I don't like it, then I just add a bit of water and blot it up with a paper towel. But this way you can kind of bring out some of the bricks just a little bit more. I'm only using a tiny little bit of color and popping it in between all of the bricks. And I really like how that just enhances them a little bit more, given the fact that we did white bricks on white paper. So the little details are fun to add in. And then now I'm going to put this aside to dry. I've got all of my little flowers on there, and I will move on to the sentiment. Now this is a stamp and cut set. I haven't had these before from Hero Arts. This was in my little pile. I got a little bit of Christmas money. That was what I asked for Christmas, was money for crafting. Now I'm going to cut out the sentiment here, and I use this packaging foam whenever I'm going to cut out anything that is super intricate. I sometimes try it first. My die cutting machine is a Cuttlebug, and it is very old. I wouldn't say it's in the best of shape, but it does the job, so there's no need to replace it. And I have cut out a few of these. In fact, I'm going to cut out 3, and I am going to layer these up because this is a gorgeous little thinking of you sentiment, nice and fine. I'm going to prick out any of those little bits that are stuck in the middle of the O's and all the swirls and things. I like this sentiment because it is nice and big, and it kind of fills up plenty of the page. I had been looking for a couple of those in my card making. I definitely am getting to the point now where I'm kind of refining all my supplies and finding the gaps, and then handing on things that I just don't use that often because I have a really small space, so I have to make good choices about the things that I choose to use. So yeah, I'm definitely refining it down and making sure that everything I do have is what I'm going to use. Now here I have one of the layers of the Thinking of You. I'm using some VersaMark sticky embossing ink, and I have some gold embossing powder. I'm going to coat the front of the Thinking of You, and then I'm going to bring in another piece of paper so it doesn't stick to all of that embossing on the background. And then I will heat set the first layer here. Now often a couple of things with heat embossing. The first thing is that you can sometimes find you get kind of bubbles, little dots or little dimples in your heat embossing. There is a couple of different things you can do about this, but the main one that I like to try is to just add a second layer of embossing powder. So this looks gorgeous as is. The other reason that I like to add a second layer of embossing powder is it just makes the sentiment kind of that much more thick and smooth, and kind of stands off the page just that little bit more. So I definitely think it is worth putting a second layer on. Sometimes I even put a third layer on depending on how dimensional I want it to be, but I definitely think it's one of those things that is worth your time. So the sentiment here is looking really gorgeous and nice and shiny with that gold, and then I'm going to layer these up. Now there are lots of different ways to do this. Again, if you have some Stick It double-sided adhesive, you can pop that on the back before you die cut any of the words, but I am just going to go with some good old liquid glue. The liquid glue is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. Now I have a video on my channel about how I get it from the little tubs that it comes in into these glue bottles. It's really simple, and there shouldn't be too much mess involved at all. Now I'm going to lay out all 3 of these, and you can see this kind of creates a really nice dimensional sentiment, as well as having the gold at the front and the peaking white of the different layers come out from underneath it. So we are all done there. Now I have a piece of vellum here, and honestly I am using vellum more and more in my card making. I find it one of the best tools to help my sentiments not get lost in the background. I still want to see all of those gorgeous backgrounds that I create. However, sometimes I feel like they are busy, and depending on the color of your sentiment, it's so easy for it to get lost. So here I am going to cut down my panel finally. I can see the pieces that I want to cut off. And I think this ends up being 4 by 5¼ inches. I have my card base here, and I want to bring some of that gold from the sentiment into the background as well. So I am just going to add some of that sticky embossing ink, the VersaMark one, and make sure when you are embossing you also use a good sticky ink. If your ink pad is a little bit dry, that is the other reason that I forgot to mention before as to why you will often not get good embossing results. You need it to be nice and juicy, so buying a re-inker is really key as well. Now here I've just added it to the front of my card. I'm not worried about the center because obviously I'm going to cover that up with my panel. But I'll use my heat gun and melt all of that around the outside. I use a nice heavyweight 110 pound Nina Solar White card base, so it's not going to curl up or warp with any of the heat embossing. I am going to round off the corners, which again is completely up to you. It's completely optional, and I've just been enjoying doing this a little bit more on a few of my cards recently. Now to add on the sentiment, I have some double-sided tape on the back here, but when I am using vellum, I like to adhere this down and wrap it around the first layer first. So I will bend that around one way and then make it around the other way, and it will sit nicely. So this was such an easy technique to do, putting down some embossing paste and then inking over it. So you can have a look at the stencils that you have and kind of work them together. So use one stencil to create a pattern with the paste and then go over top with some inking and more stencils. That would be really fun. So let me know if you have enjoyed seeing this technique today, and if you would like to share any of your work with me. Over on our Facebook page is the best place to do that, so I will leave links to the Facebook page down in the description box below, as well as any of the products which are still available. I will do my best to link them down below, so make sure you check out the supplies list. I've added a few little Nuvo drops into the center of the flowers there to tidy them up, then a few little gold Nuvo drops, again just tying in that sentiment and background. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!